Spiritist Conversations. And you know the drill. This is a show where we sit with friends and talk about things through a spiritist lens in an informal and unscripted way. Today is sort of a special episode. Today, we're talking about a very serious topic, both from a physical and also a spiritual perspective. We're talking about the coronavirus and COVID-19, as it is widely known at the moment. We have a great group of people here, and we want to jump in and make sure you know who's on the call here so that we can go ahead and start the conversation. So thank you all for being here. And we also want to let you know that today, if you are following us live on Facebook, you have an opportunity to chime in and put your comments in there, and we may get to them. We may want to acknowledge you and also give you a chance to ask questions, because we have an important and special guest here today as well that can help us with things. But let's start with the usual suspects. As you guys know, I am Dan Assisi, and I'm really glad to be here with you. And I hail from California today. And we have our very own friend, Flavio. Flavio, say hello.
Hello, everyone. Welcome.
Where are you hailing from today, Flavio?
I am from my home office because we're in the lockdown here in Massachusetts. We're not supposed to leave our houses. So good old Massachusetts.
Awesome. Great. Thank you. And we also have our friend Susanna. Susanna, you want to say hello to folks?
Hello, everybody. I am from my home in Miami.
Ah, look at that. A very distinct group of folks. And you know, the usual suspects. But we also have our very own Sonia Doi. Dr. Sonia Doi, can you say hello to us? Thank you for being here.
Hi. It's a great pleasure and honor to be part of the group today. And I'm talking from Maryland.
Well, wonderful. And Sonia, tell us a little bit about your participation in the spiritual movement, because we're very excited about having you here with us today.
Well, I am with the Allan Kardec Spiritist Society of Maryland, but I'm also with the Spiritist Medical Association. And can I tell you a little bit about?
Oh, please.
Absolutely.
I think that's the next question.
Okay. So the Spiritist Medical Association was founded in 2006 here in the US. And it is an association founded by Spiritist medical doctors. And this was modeled in Brazil. The first Spiritist Medical Association was founded in Brazil, São Paulo, Brazil, and grew in there with many organizations, became international with some organizations around the world, and inspired by Dr. Marlene Nobre, who was the president of the International Spiritist Medical Association, we found an organization here in the US. So the main mission of our organization is to talk to healthcare professionals and to convey the concept, the Spiritist concept, that human beings are more than the physical body. We are the spirit that governs the physical body. So we usually have biannual meetings where we convey the message, where we bring medical doctors and other healthcare professionals, scientists together with their perspectives, with their experiences from research, from their clinical work, that share this idea, this concept that we are spirits.
Thank you, Sonia. This is great. As you guys can see, that makes a lot of sense, right? We wanted to make sure we had some expertise here in the show to talk about the medical aspects of things, and besides having also our very own Susanna, who also works in the health field, right, Susanna?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, you want to say something?
Yes, I'm a physical therapist. And so just to give a little bit of a perspective professionally, I work for a program here in Florida that takes care of 800 elderly individuals, 65 years of age, older, all the way to, I think our oldest patient right now is about 105. Under my care, on a daily basis, I have about 250 individuals. And I'm also a consultant for a hospice company here. So I'm working very close these days. My days have become longer, not shorter, because we are really running around and reconfiguring everything to attend to this population that is the most vulnerable population at this time.
Great. Thank you, Susanna. And it is a green picture out there, right? We are all worried about the coronavirus, the COVID-19, but it might be a good place to start to ask the question, what is COVID-19, right? So we have folks here who might be very well prepared to answer that better than I think Flavio and I, which is the two of you. Much better, right, Flavio?
Much better.
Yes. So what is COVID-19, Sonia?
COVID-19 is the name actually of the disease, the virus disease that is being spread by the coronavirus type 2, which is one of the viruses from a large family. Coronaviruses are a large family that has been around since the early 1900s. 1939, 1949 were the first cases described. These viruses used to be among animals and even humans. There are several types. The most well-known lately were the ones that were known as SARS, the severe respiratory, acute respiratory syndrome, and then MERS, which was the Middle East respiratory syndrome. And now we had this new type of virus that's similar to those two, especially similar to the one that caused SARS, and was in animals, but somehow it got mutated and then started to infect humans. So this was due to a mutation, and now it infects people. So then they gave the name COVID-19 as CO for corona, VI for virus, D for disease, and 19 because it was discovered in the last months of 2019. Okay. So that's what COVID-19 is the disease caused by this coronavirus. And as you know, it's a virus that it's unknown so far. I mean, we don't know much about it. We have been, the scientists have been studying very, very hard just to give you an estimate of how hard they are working on this. I looked at the database of scientific papers published, and since COVID-19 came out, there's more than 1,000 papers published. So this is from December this year or January this year to today. There's more than 1,000 papers, meaning scientists are really trying to know better how this virus operates. How does it infect people, how it spreads, what are the symptoms that it causes, which organs are affected. So all this has been, and that's why we don't have a vaccine yet, because this was not a known virus. We don't have a medication that's proven effective yet. So all this is under development.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Sonia. I think that's a great primer. And I think that we are all worried about this, right? I think that the whole world has literally stopped in a way. And I think we're all worried. Like, you just heard somebody coughing out here in the broadcast. Aren't you glad you are remotely watching this? And we are quarantined in our own individual houses. But there is this ongoing fear that if we catch the coronavirus, that we may die, right? And so how realistic is that? And what are we looking here? Because I think at this point in time, there's also other flus and other things that generally go around. Is that right?
That's correct. And I think everyone has heard this. The virus, most people, like 80% of the people in a general way, have very mild symptoms. And 20% are very, very severely affected. And these people who are severely affected need to be hospitalized because they need respiratory assistance. They need to be put in a machine to breathe. And that's the big problem. Because if you account for 20% of a certain population, it depends on how many hospitals are equipped to receive those people. And this is why this is a very contagious disease. And this is why we have to really be very cautious. And it's very important that we maintain social distance. Sometimes people say, well, I'm not in the risk group. Yeah, but there's a lot of people who are asymptomatic, no symptoms or very mild symptoms like any other cold or flu or any, and they might be transmitting the disease to somebody who is in the high-risk group. So it's not just the elderly, and Susanna here is working with the elderly group. That's probably one of the most affected, but we have seen children dying from this disease already, because if one has a weak immune system, whatever the background disease is, if this person, a young person, is affected by any other disease, they are at high risk.
So Sonia, for the folks that are joining us right now, as we're talking about COVID-19, right, and the aspects that we hear and see from the spiritual perspective, is this the end of the world? Are we all going to die? Thanks to this virus.
Thanks for leveling it, Fabio. for making me real. And actually, a lot of people are thinking this is the end of times, right?
Yeah, is it the end of times? I mean, let's be honest, right? That's what we do here is British Conversations. Just bring honest and candid and transparent topics. Is this the end of the world?
We will all die one day or another, right?
That is correct.
That's correct. So, but it doesn't mean that we are all going to die from this disease. So there are several perspectives. One is that, as I said before, 80% of us may be infected and not die. As we have seen in China, a lot of people have recovered. Other people who were infected in other countries have already recovered. So 80% are probably going to survive, as well as from a flu or other cold. From the 20% of people, there is 1 to 3% lethality, meaning 1 to 3% of those may die. And this is not precise. All these calculations, 80%, 20%, 1%, these are calculations made based on the known cases. So Correct. You say 80% of what? 80% of those who we know tested positive for the disease. And there are many places where the kit for testing is not available. And there are many places where people are dying in the hospitals or at their homes. And once the person is dead, nobody does the test. So we don't know the real number of lethal cases. So Flavio, just to answer your question, we are not all going to die from this virus.
Oh, that's a relief.
Yeah,
thank you.
But stay home anyways.
But exactly. Yeah, but don't go against the government recommendations, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And this, I'm glad that we are all talking about this now, because at this point, I have seen people with conflicted opinions, opposite opinions. And we have to listen to people who have been working in research, working hard, the healthcare authorities, the World Health Organization, the CDC, and other organizations like this. They are talking from scientific knowledge. They are talking on the facts that they have been observing. So they have a reason to say social distance is important, hygiene is important. Anything else that people are talking about, they have no basis to say, oh, this is not valid, social distance is baloney. No, we have data, we have scientific data to tell us, please, 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 follow the guidance from the healthcare authorities. This is really, really important.
Yep,
go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, against facts, there are no arguments, right? We should all follow those that know way more than we do. Absolutely, right? Absolutely.
Hopefully. Yeah. Yes, and thank you, Sonia, for explaining too the idea of the capacity, right? The reason why we are quarantined at home too, like you said, is because if we all get sick at the same time, because the virus can be so aggressive, we can't all go to the hospital at the same time. The hospitals won't take us, and that's why we're trying to flatten the curve. We're trying to kind of space it out and make it easier for our medical professions. And a big shout out to our medical professionals out there who are like Susanna, like Sonia, are spending very long hours, right? Working, preparing, who are away from their families, who are exhausted, also having to deal with their own worries, right, about their families, and putting all of that aside to dedicate and answer this higher calling that they had of taking care of others. Just a beautiful moment.
Then
100%.
If I may just add one more thing. I'm sorry. Just to add one more thing. With the data that has been collected so far, there's been mathematical calculations showing that the infection is growing in a geometric mode. What does this mean? It's not just one person infects 2, 2 infect 4, 4 infect 8. It's 1 infects 2, 2 infects 4, 4 infects 16, 16 infects 16 times 16. So the number is growing exponentially. And that explains why it's so important that we stay in our place. If we start moving around, we're infecting more and more and more and more people. Correct. I'm sorry, Susanna, I cut it out.
No, I was just there are details that people don't necessarily think about. I think the challenges today is, yes, some people, they don't take the scientific information seriously. People don't know exactly what goes on in hospitals today. Unfortunately, A first case was identified in the hospital that I work, not in the building that I work, but on our campus. And so that means that every single person, every single medical professional that was in touch with that patient, including CNAs, nurses, perhaps other patients, had to be put in isolation. Workers were sent home. So now other workers need to step in. People are being moved around the hospital. All our vacation time was automatically suspended if we had vacation approved previously, because it can be a shortage of professionals doing the most basic work at any given time. And so when you see those postages on Facebook and social media, you know, we need to do our job. Our job is to be here for you, and you need to do your job, which is stay home so we can do ours, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are like little things that are happening that people don't necessarily think about. And so it becomes, you know, very
Chaotic.
stressful. And I think that, you know, we face a huge challenge, right? Because we are so not used to stop, right? So we're so not used to accept that there are moments in our lives that we cannot do everything that we want the way that we want. We have a difficult time with acceptance in general. And so I see a lot of people, but then there is this state that I see spreading where is like anger, and I don't want to, you know what I'm saying? So like this difficulty in accepting the limitations, they're so important and necessary at this time.
Sentence, join the club. We don't know either. We had a technical problem here. We are broadcasting this live to Facebook, and Facebook must not have liked, our internet connection at a point in time. So we apologize for that. I know that we also cut the flow here, but we are going to pick up where we left, because that's what we do. As a human species and as a group of folks, we just keep going. So where were we? Who remembers?
Good question.
Sonia, what were you talking brilliantly about?
Sonia was in a row. She was just, bringing it all out.
No.
I was talking about.
Can you guys hear each other? Because I can't hear you guys.
Really?
We hear each other. I hear you, Sonia.
Yeah. I hear Dan.
Let's keep going.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was talking about spiritual hygiene, and this article that actually was published by a social worker in 2016. She's from the University of Ontario, and she talks about spiritual hygiene. And she makes this analogy with our hygiene habits, brushing our teeth, taking a bath, etc. And she says, we do this to maintain good physical health. Why don't we do spiritual hygiene to maintain good mental health? Because we are living under a stress condition every day with different things that stresses us out. So she was talking in this article about several spiritual practices, including prayer, meditation, not necessarily linked to religion, but spiritual in a broad sense. And so at this moment, I think that as spiritists, we have good resources to follow, to do our spiritual hygiene. And as you were talking about, Susanna, there's a lot of people who feel so angry because they're confined in their houses, or because they don't know what's happening and they are afraid that they may die or something. All this is a situation very stressful. It's stressful just because it takes us out of our habit, our everyday routine. So it's out of our routine, we get stressed. And it's a good time for us to practice not only our physical hygiene, but also spiritual hygiene by praying, by meditating. And in Spiritism, we have a very good resource of explanations that explains to us why we should keep our hopes, why we can understand how things like this happens. So I think you guys can elaborate more, and I can, otherwise I'll be talking here all night.
I just want to, before we get into the whys, adding to the spiritual hygiene, it's so funny how everything that is material is so incredibly neutral, but it can become a very good thing, like technology. Right now, we are connected, and that's an amazing thing, right? It's amazing, it's phenomenal. The fact that we can be together having this conversation in 4 different states in this country.
Yep.
And we also connected to, let's say, WhatsApp groups. And I have to tell you that I have mute many of my WhatsApp groups because as a result of this state of anxiety, there is nowadays, I don't know if you guys have experienced that, but this flood of like messages being sent over and over and over. And I wonder, people are home, and are they spending the entire day just doing that?
Mm-hmm.
Like on social media, reading about it, talking about it, and sending messages about it. I mean, part of it is okay, perhaps, seeking a balance in that, mental hygiene. Yes, you want to be informed, and yes, you want to connect with people, but yes, take advantage and disconnect from everything and open a good book and feed your mind and feed your brain with something else.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to work, and I'm trying to deal with all this, like, reality. And this, I had to really disconnect from some of these groups. And in some of them, I even said, folks, take a deep breath. And what are you feeding your brains with, right? So just a thought.
Even
Go ahead.
no, it's a great point. So even for immunological perspectives, right? Like stress and anxiety lower our immune system, so it's counterproductive for us to be freaking out about this thing, right? Sure, it's a big deal and it's a horrible virus. Let's be clear about this. Nobody's minimizing that.
Minimizing,
Yeah.
right?
Nobody's minimizing that.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, we also need to make sure that we give ourselves the best possible mental health environment that we can, because the physical damage that the virus is going to cause us is not the only damage. I think that we are going to have like post-traumatic stress from this, right? There's going to be economical repercussions that we can even need to talk about it. But so this is like the moment before the moment, it feels, right? We are in a lot of anxiety, and in Spiritism, we even use sometimes the term psychosphere, which is the atmosphere, the psychic atmosphere around all of us. And some of us are more sensitive than others, but I think we can all sort of feel that there's been a little bit of a pull down, like people are feeling anxiety and fear all of a sudden. And this is kind of like a connected feeling of fear, that because we're all broadcasting, we're all feeding into that, and which does not help us at all, right? So it's important for us from our mental and spiritual perspective to also be rebellious when it comes to that, right? Also be thinking positive, not only for our own body's sake, but also for our communal mental state of mind, but not minimizing it, but just being positive and reminding that we are going to outlast this thing, right? It's going to be tough, and it's going to be hard, and it's going to be painful. And to be completely honest, we might lose people we know, right? That's going to be super tough. But as a society, as a species, we are going to overcome this. And I think that one of the things that we haven't necessarily dealt with as a society is this fear of death, right? I think at the core of COVID-19 and the coronavirus is this fear that we can die. And funny enough, well, not funny at all, worse, a really bad choice of words, but interestingly, Spiritism is really well equipped to address that because, from an empirical perspective, we have time and time again researched and validated the fact that life goes on, right? So even if we lose our physical body, we don't disappear. We're not gone. So I think that there is a reason for us to kind of go back to what Susanna was saying, which piggyback on what Sonia started with mental hygiene. There's an emotional component that should benefit us as well, right? And along those lines, I think the question to ask is, what are we learning from COVID? Like, what's COVID teaching us from an emotional and spiritual level, right? I think Susanna started touching on that of this is a moment for reclusion and for reflection, right? What do you guys think?
I think that there's a lot to learn from so many aspects. Then I think that we learn from Spiritism that everything has an objective to propel humanity, to make humanity progress. Even with something as bad as this, we have seen science progressing, because there's going to be more knowledge. There's going to be technologies advancing rapidly to produce more resources for hospital, for equipment, for medication, for vaccine. So there is already a scientific progress there. But there's other things that we are learning. As we get, in our homes, we are now living with our family. We have a moment that usually we don't. We are working all day long. We come back home at evening, and we have very, little time with our loved ones. Now we have all the time during the day, and we can use this for our own to understand our own problems, our interactions with our family members. We can use that to improve ourselves. It's a moment that we can go inside and meditate and think about what we can do to improve ourselves. And one of them is to improve the interactions with our family members.
Yeah. So Sonia, thank you for sharing that, because this is a balm and a blessing and a very positive, connotation or take on the this whole, pandemic, so to speak, right? We have more time with our families, we have more time at home, but at the same time, right, when we look at folks that are alone, when we look at folks that are, with not the best of their abilities, right, to, from a cognitive, mental, spiritual speaking, sense of things, how do we tell them? What are the things we can tell them, right, to really calm their minds? You say, you know what, as Jesus taught us, pray and watch, right? Let us all do our parts, but let's never forget that while everything is going under control, there's a higher, force that controls everything. We still have to do our part, and we still have to be positive and optimistic about the whole situation. How do we get all these things together, right? Stay positive, do our parts, amidst all the that's happening in front of us. And how do we stay positive?
But that's not really different from what it was before, right? If you think about it, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that if you think about it, COVID just gave us a forced timed out, right? Because we have already been struggling with all this stuff anyways. We have been seeing more than ever people struggling with meaning and purpose. What do they want to do from their lives? This just happens to be like a forced timeout that nature is giving us so that we actually have a chance to go and think deeper about this, right? But it's really not new if you think about it. It's just that it's now we have this time to kind of learn how to do this. For instance, one interesting thing that I find from this reflection, Flavio, is this idea that we are kind of like being forced to learn that caring for others is good for us, right? We all knew this, but look at this. Now we are all, like here in the US at least, right? Most of us are in a shelter-in-place orders where you don't leave your house unless you really have to. And that's not only for you not to catch the virus, but more importantly, so that you don't spread the virus to other people, right? So that has been teaching us to be a little bit selfish, right? A little bit less selfish, because it's not about us getting the virus only, but it's also those who are immunosuppressed or immunochallenged or at risk category. And we're finally sort of realizing in a very practical way something that we have been told like spiritually from many times, which is, it's giving that you receive, right? If you are helpful in treating others and making sure that others are not catching the virus, in turn, there will be less of a chance for you to catch the virus too. So there are some moral pieces that we can kind of take away from that,
I do 100% agree. There are some moral lessons that we can bring back to our own lives and put them into practice, 100%. But I want to go back to my question. Dan, I'm sorry, you answered only a third of my question. How do we stay positive and optimistic about the future?
I can't jump in unless I don't want to hog the air here, right? But I will unless Susanna, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I was just catching up because I got cut off a little bit, and I just want to make sure I knew what you guys were talking about. So if I say something that you guys already said, just let me know. But how do you stay positive? I think that spiritism is incredible. I feel so fortunate that we have it, because what it does is it gives us a deeper purpose and meaning for our lives, right? So we know what we are here for. We're not here for fun, right? We're here with a specific purpose of spiritual enlightenment, of spiritual growth. So everything that we are facing, those are trials. Those are experiences that help us to do what Sonia was talking about, which is grow. Trials, challenges, they force us to use part of our brains that we weren't using. They force us to be creative. They force us to be smarter, and force us to be smarter intellectually and also morally. We, as Danny was saying, we begin to realize that for me to be happy, it's important that the person next to me too, that our happiness is connected, that we cannot be happy alone. And so we understand that everything is happening has a higher purpose. The whole universe is absolutely conspiring for the betterment of humanity. Everything that comes for a reason. And God, in its incredible and love for us, has created laws that are absolutely just and perfect. And so when we create an environment that is as toxic as it has been for us as humanity, speaking, right, we open the possibilities for all kinds of diseases to manifest. So we have created. So a lot of people may see this as God punishing us. No, God does not mean to punish us in any way, shape, or form, but God has created laws, right, that help us to always force us to move back towards balance, towards harmony. So sometimes we go too far in creating chaos and disharmony. And so what we are dealing today is just a natural effect of own construction of our own pathway. And it's happening because God is, let's put it this way, right, preoccupied with each one of us, with our well-being. And so when we are now incapable to say, this is too much, it's time to step back, then the laws, nature itself, finally of giving us the limits that help to improve. So when you see life from this perspective, I don't know about you, but I have a lot of hope, because I think that this moment is a very, very important moment. It's a moment we know that humanity progresses very slowly, but that from time to time we have big events that shake our foundations, and to tell humanity, please wake up. Let's take a little bigger step forward here. And so bigger challenges coming in our way. So I see this with a lot of hope. Of course, at this time, we're dealing with the suffering, we're dealing with the limitations. We don't like those things. We like life to be the way we want, right? But the reality is a lot of good is coming out of it.
Yep.
I'm sure
Yep.
each one of you can speak personally about the benefits that you already experienced in your personal lives. I have I'm like, I'm going to be a different person after this. I'm reevaluating my entire life, my family relationships, how I use my time, and etc. etc. You know what I mean? So we're doing this individually and collectively. Go, Danny.
No, I was gonna say, like, I thought about it like last week, like, 5 years from now, when we are sitting around a restaurant eating and talking, right? We are going to turn around and say, do you remember 2020, the year that never was, and COVID-19, right? Wow, like, right? So how was life different then? And then we might have conversations such as, wow, since that day, now, what are the things that I'm doing differently now? Well, I used to spend a lot more time thinking about my career and work, for instance, and thinking that was giving me meaning. And I shifted. And I realized that what's really most important to me when I was afraid of losing it is to be with my kids, right? Or to be with my partners, or to spend time with my friends, or to be more involved in community work, right? So there is a movement, an opportunity to recenter here and focus on what really matters. This is calling us to focus and to make sure that we know what is it that's really important to us, that we have not really thought about it, or we thought we knew, and then all of a sudden, hold on a second, my work is not as important as I thought, right? What really matters is my family and their well-being, and I sort of forgotten that, or my friends, or what have you, right? But this shift inwards is hard. This changing is hard, because doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, which is what we have been doing as a society, clearly wasn't working. So time out for us, speed bump, slow down a little bit, and get to think about the stuff, right? But I love what you said, Susanna, because Flavio, to go back to the original question, right, is how do you remain sane? I think Susanna did a beautiful job saying it, but if you have those values, and if you don't change those old values that are materialistic based, that is to say that they're focused only on the material and the here and now, it's going to be really hard for you to be happy in the long term, right? So this is a call for changing that, like Susanna described. Like this is our time to rethink things, right?
It really is.
I would like to go back also to what Flavio was asking, because Flavio, you were saying, how do we get ourselves in this good position so that we can comfort, we can help others? And that's very important, because we need to be strong ourselves first. Like in the airplane, you put the mask first to help others. So at this point, we need to do our part in whatever it is to help control the situation, but we have to take care of ourselves. In Spiritism teaches that we don't have to fear death. This is a natural fear, but we have a consciousness, we have a conscious knowledge that we don't have to fear death. Second, we know that everything will happen at the right time. If we have to die today, we may die from this infection, or we may die from a heart attack, whatever, right? So why are we so hooked into fear of dying from this virus when I could die from aneurysm, from heart attack, or whatever else? Yep. So that's first. So we need to feed ourselves from the knowledge that we have from Spiritism to maintain our hope, our faith very strong. And with that, we are then able to help others, to give them hope, to keep them in a good spirit, in a good perspective, looking to a better future, and not just looking at all the bad news, all the things that are happening. We need to be conscious of our part to do what is better to contain the spread of the virus, but we need to maintain our good attitude, mental attitude, mental thoughts, so that we can, like Daniel said before, boost our immune system. That's very important. If we take medication and our immune system is not responding, medication may not even be effective. So we need to boost our immune system.
You know, something else that Spiritism has also taught me, as you were talking about, Sonia, is to think about things not from our physical perspective, but from a spiritual perspective. So I think it's also important for us to stop for a second and think, how is the spiritual world reacting to this? And without a doubt, I am pretty sure that they have harnessed extreme help, right? That we are receiving an enormous amount of help and support from our spiritual mentors and guides, who no doubt knew this was coming, and you know, were preparing for this, especially to help us with, you know, withstand it from an emotional and a spiritual perspective. I am reminded, for instance, of the works of Andrea Lewis, right, which is a spirit that communicated with us via the wonderful mediumship of Francisco Xavier. And one of the first books, Nosso Lar, right, Astral City, sometimes it's translated. It was psychographed in the 1940s. So we're talking about World War II time. And it was really interesting to see him comment at that time, at that period in time, see him comment about how the spiritual world was preparing to help us. We're incarnates, we're here in this world, withstand all the challenges and all the horrible things that comes with a world war scenario, right? So no doubt spirituality is working with us, is helping us, and we gotta remember that too, because we're only thinking about the negative. And one of the ways for us to kind of remain positive is to know that there is a lot of help and work that's being done on the spiritual side to not only clear up our psychosphere, but individually to be closer to us, right? I'm pretty sure that if we stop to listen, our mentors and guides are going to be whispering in our soul, right? Some words of encouragement, and that we can remember what's really, really important here. So it's important for us to remember too that there's help. There are things happening on the other side that are helping you. This could be much worse than it is, probably, right?
Yeah.
And so we sometimes say, where is God in this moment of trials and tribulations? When in fact God and the spiritual realm has been here all along, and they have made this less daunting and less difficult than it should or needed to be, right? So there's another perspective to that as well, that I think we should remember, people. Hey, people, spirituality is helping with us here.
Absolutely. This is also described in the book, Divaldo Franco's book, Planetary Transition, when he describes all the spirits that came to help in that huge disaster in
tsunami in Asia.
Tsunami, yeah. So we need always to remind ourselves that Jesus is our planetary governor. He's looking he's watching over us, and as you said, Daniel, it could be much, much worse.
It could. So there are reasons for optimism, right? We need to recap a little bit. So, and we are running against our time. So maybe this is time for us to shift gears a little bit into our wrap up. Just really think about what are the takeaways that this opportunity affords us and from our conversations here today. Does anybody want to help us wrap up? We'll go around and have some thoughts from each one of us. Does anybody want to start?
Yeah, I can go. What has been really in my mind, virus teaches us about human vulnerability and vulnerability and frailty of material realm that we identify strongly with, right? So it took something invisible, something visible. I mean, in materially speaking, for our eyes and our hands, to remind us that this is not the real stuff, and that all these ego rides um, that we enjoy so much, these illusions of power, these illusions of supremacy, illusions of all kinds of that we nurture, they kind of collapse in face of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a funny thing what I'm going to say, although like Danny said, it's funny, but working with terminal patients, in two different fronts, I'm always confronting that. And often I go to the funeral of my patients to be with the families, and always, don't take this wrong, but I always like going because actually seeing the body reminds me. And it's funny because we tend to forget that this is just a garment. This is not real.
Yep.
There are immortalists and we are spiritualists. On a moment to moment of each day, and facing this crisis right now, so much anxiety comes from identification with the material and our fear of death and all those things. So it's I always find that a very interesting exercise, just to go and see the body and say, this is not that person. The person did not die. Like Daniel did not die. It's the body of Daniel who died. And so I think I'm just really, I find it so incredible that something that we cannot see had such an incredible impact in our world,
Humbling.
in foundations with such an incredible strength to remind us, one, that we are all equal. We are all equal. It does not matter your color. It does not matter how much money you have. It does not matter if you live in the most powerful in this world. You are just as vulnerable. And so this is really, I think this is really moving me, these ideas. And for me, that's what I'm being like thinking about pretty much each day.
Great. Flavio.
Thank you, Susanna. I echo your words as well. I think this has taught us a lot of things, right? This virus doesn't, is not limited by geographic places, by borders, by ethnicities, by social status, right? It doesn't discriminate at all. It includes everyone, right? If we are still stuck with those preconceived ideas, anything besides we're immortal beings or spiritual beings, right? I think this is the call and this is the ask for all of us to think twice, right? This is just one episode of our lives that's going to contain many more episodes down the road, right? And of course, as we know and learn through Spiritism, nothing happens by accident. There is control, right? Everything is happening under the guidance and governance of our, guide and model, which is Jesus, as we know that. So we have to do our parts. We have to pray. We have to watch. You have to try to maintain as much as possible, right? A good mental health, right? Optimism, and really pray and understand that if we're doing our parts, for contributing to society, maintaining social distance, following the guidelines of our healthcare professionals, right, and public health professionals as well, everything is gonna be okay, right? So we're gonna go out of this. We're gonna overcome this, and we're gonna be at the other side of the table, much more enlightened after everything passes. Those are my words, guys.
Indeed, indeed. And we're going to let Sonia go last. So I'll take a couple of words here as well. And I would say that I would love to echo everything that you guys have said tremendously. And this is a great opportunity for us to kind of retreat inside, think about all those things that we have been thinking about already. Many of us have been feeling this itch to really change the way we are doing things, whether it's work, whether it's our habits, whether it's spending more time with the family. Go inside. Since we cannot go outside, let's go inside. And remember too, that we were made for this, right? As spiritual beings who are here to grow and help others grow, we have everything that we need to face this challenge and any other challenge that comes away, because God, right? God would never give us a challenge, an obstacle that's beyond our ability to meet it and overcome it. So we have to trust that, yes, it's going to be painful, but that we can overcome, and we will. And the way to do this is, remember that we need to take care of ourselves, to stay focused on what really matters, stay focused on the beautiful. And I think that this gives us an opportunity to do that. And I also want to give a quick shout out to our friend Kirsten, who also is a medical professional working on the field. Thank you for being with us. And always supporting us as well. Okay, we hope to have you in the next Spiritus conversation here. And with that, let's turn over to our friend and special guest here, Sonia. Sonia, can you give us your closing remarks and your perspective on this thing for all of us?
I think you all said a very important thing, that one of the greatest lessons we have learned is that this virus taught us that we are all equal. The virus has no discrimination. Everybody could be affected. So that's the greatest lesson. Second thing that I would like to say is, please take care of yourself from the physical point of view, but especially from the mental point of view, by looking for resources. Spiritism gives us great resources. We can learn so much and get rid of fear. Fear, it does not help us. It will drain our immune system. So we have to work against that. Let's bring hope to our hearts. Let's bring joy. And one important thing that I have learned through this crisis is the sense of humanity and fraternity that I have witnessed. I have myself got many phone calls and messages from friends asking if I needed help, not to get out because they know I am in a risk group. So this moved me, because they are caring. And at the same time, I have been calling people that for years and years I have not called, just to ask, are you okay? So this is uniting us on a sense of love and fraternity. This is a great, great lesson. So please take good care of yourself.
Thank you, Sonia. We are reaching the end. I want to thank all of you guys who were here, who joined us, who also put up with our disconnection there. Reminding you to follow us on Facebook or on YouTube, to send us your questions, your perspectives. We would love for you to be part of the conversation. We have never intended this to be the final word on anything. This is a program on a show where we just get the ball rolling and hope that you take that further by talking to folks you know, folks you don't know, whoever it is that is near you and that you want to talk about. And of course, engage with us as well. Special thank you, of course, to our friend, Dr. Sonia Doi, who leads the Spiritus Medical Association here in the US and internationally as well. Thank you for that, Sonia. Thank you for being here. And
Thank you so much.
And the SMA is such an incredible resource, especially in these times, right? In these types of need, and understanding who else is better equipped to understand the nexus between health and spirituality. So thank you for being here. And Sonia, I know that that the SMA, the Spiritus Medical Association, is available on Facebook, right? And I think you guys have a website as well. Can you help us understand how to reach you guys, how to follow you guys?
Yeah, we have a website that actually is being with helps for some friends. It's being refaced. So very soon, probably in a week or so, we are going to have a new website uploaded. And our address is www.sma-us.org. And if you get into our webpage, there's a link for the Facebook. There's also a link for videos, and you can see videos from our past congresses. You can see a lot of videos that we have uploaded there. So I appreciate your support, Daniel. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with all of you. And if anybody has any questions about SMA, please go into our website. There's a link. You can send us a message. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, Flavio, I think you're muted. You want to say goodbye? Is that what it was? I unmuted you. Oh my God, he muted himself again. This is typical of our conversation over here. I am going to channel the spirit of Flavio. You can go ahead, Flavio.
I was just gonna ask, is there a better rap than this? Thank you so much, Sonia, for those great words. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good seeing you all. Bye.